Hello. What are
Hello.
you doing? I'm on the internet. What are you doing? I have this guy
Uh,
here, Nirmal.
oh,
Hello.
hello. How are you? What are we
Nirmal
doing here? Where are
is my
we?
co-host. Did you know that, internet? He's the guy that hangs out with me while I don't know what I'm doing on the internet. We're two guys don't knowing what they're doing on the internet. That's a great show title. The grammar people will love that. How are you, Nirmal?
I'm doing okay. How about you, Brett?
I'm good. Um, I'm excited to not just only answer the questions for people, but you're working today. You look like you're in a real office.
Yes, I'm on the road. I'm like your co-host on the road, like a correspondent, a remote
Yes, that's
correspondent,
right.
or
Let's
something
go
like that.
now to our correspondent in a in an office, a typical office environment somewhere in
Yes,
America.
DevOpsing.
Yeah, DevOpsing IRL. Um,
Yes.
so
So
everyone,
we're trying this out. Like we're gonna
yes.
try this
Oh,
out, right? Like
are we going to do this
both
all
of
the
us are on
time?
the I mean, I'm on the road, you're on the road, so we're this is like an experiment for seeing if we can do the live show while one of us or both of us are on the road. I mean, obviously when we're in the same place, like at KubeCon or at DockerCon or at some star asterisk con,
Yes.
we've done our live streams from there. But while we're on the road, give this a shot. Hopefully, people enjoy uh, this remote correspondent kind of vibe for today's show.
I feel like for correspondent, you have to be holding the mic. So,
Oh, there we go.
so
Okay,
yeah.
so
So
I've got to do one of these things.
now you're in correspondent mode.
I got to go like, yes, Brett. The DevOps is cloudy today.
The boom boom. Ironically, these things don't stay in my ears, so I often have to do that while I'm
Oh, there we
talking. So
go.
I feel like a reporter sometimes because they like to fly out like just randomly in the middle of a show. Um, so internet, we need your answers. People
Yes.
of the cloud native DevOps community, which is what we call this thing now. Um, we're planning for all of our guests for 2024, and we need to know who you want to see. What tools do you want us to talk about? What guests from the companies and the projects do you want us to talk about? Now, we focus on cloud native DevOps, which basically means containerizing everything.
Hmm.
And that means it needs to be something related to containers or cloud or something in the DevOps world. And it sadly isn't going to be like, let's talk about ChatGPT. Unless we talk about ChatGPT for DevOps, then maybe
Um,
that there's something there.
I think we see a uh, we talked to a company. I don't know if you were there with me. I think you were when we were at KubeCon. There was one company that had like a chatbot in Slack for doing DevOps tasks. I think we talked to them. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
it was.
that was an interesting. That might be.
Were you with me when I did that? There was maybe that was a different booth. I remember one booth that was making um, run books via chat, so you could tell it, give me a run book for creating some EC2 instances via Terraform or something like that, and then it would spit out in sort of a notebook format. Um, that was something I remember from me, but I don't remember AI chat ops. Is that what you're thinking? AI chat ops, like
It was like
Gen AI.
in Slack you could ask this bot like create a Kubernetes cluster. Um, what region is my EKS cluster in? Like how many pods am I running? And you could just do it like natural language, and it would go out and like run the kubectl command and like do things for you. I don't know. There's likely going to be more of those kind of things this year at KubeCon EU and did we just get an? Do you want to do a shout out for this
Yeah.
member? There we go.
Thank you, UnseQ.
Yeah.
So Martin just gifted a membership, and then the other Martin got the membership. I feel like the random number generator failed on that one. Let me see. Who am I going to give it to? Another Martin. Well, congratulations, Martin, and thank you, Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome.
Um, that's awesome. Thank you for that. So there is some stuff happening. Certainly, I mean, we've seen the last year, right? We've seen the chat bots, which we've had chat. I mean, I was talking about chat ops
Chat
like
ops.
a decade ago. I remember being in an interview in like 2014, 2015
Mhm.
timeframe where I was interviewing for a company as a sub on a DevOps project with a big company that
Mhm.
has flicks on the net, and they were like, "What are you really into?" And I remember saying chat ops and Slack. I don't know why I said that because I think I'd only done it like one time, but I remember talking about how because you remember GitHub
Yes.
had a what was that robot called? It was like a chat ops
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
framework in
I mean,
Node.js.
I think
Anyway,
the idea was it was a decent idea, and I think we ended up just having a lot of bots in like the chat, like Slack or
hmm
whatever chat tool. Hubot, that's it.
yeah, thanks,
Thanks,
Jacob.
Jacob. Um, but like the idea of the chat interface being the interface, like your developer slash ops interface. I think there's I think we saw a little bit of a resurgence of that last year at KubeCon because of LLMs, and
Yeah,
now like the natural language processing is like you know through the roof. It's like really good now, and so I think we're going to see like chat interfaces become a thing again, right? At reInvent, Amazon released Amazon Q, which is like a chat interface to ask questions. We're seeing those kind of chat bot interfaces coming in all kinds of products now. So that's likely going to be. I didn't think we were going to talk about this, but I think we're going to see some more of that kind of integration of Gen AI and LLMs and machine learning models in some kind of chat and other interface for the DevOps tools in some kind of way, for sure.
yeah. I think one of the things I think you and I were talking about last year too was I at some point I think we all thought there was going to be this what is it, generalized AI? What's the right term?
AGI.
AGI. Thank you. Uh, is that right? Yeah. Um,
Yeah, something like that.
yeah. So the one that like one AI to rule them all, right? Like one AI that knows everything. General something AI. Someone's going to correct me. What are these? What's happening? Okay, now Martin is gifting a membership, and James is receiving the membership. That's actually a really cool feature. I think I wasn't even aware of it. Someone did it, I don't know, a year or two ago, and I was like, what does this mean? I don't understand what's happening. But that's a really thing. Thank you all. It's kind of, I feel like what's happening right now is that thing in the Chick-fil-A line where the person pays it forward to the person behind them and pays their bill, and then that person feels obligated, so they pay their bill. And then there's like a world record of 200 people in Chick-fil-A in a row that all get their meals paid for. And then there's that one person has to ruin it for everyone because they heard it was happening and then they order 200 chicken bites and yeah.
That would be awesome if everyone was paying it forward on our
On our
chat.
channel.
So thank you
There we
again.
go. 100
So
memberships. Let's go for 100 memberships.
there we go.
Somebody make it happen. Anyway,
So yeah, AGI, artificial general intelligence, it's like
artificial
something.
general intelligence. It's
That's
yeah,
it.
it puts the AIs separate. Yeah. Um, so I think what I'm seeing, I mean, it's probably what you're seeing too, is that it's not that we have one that can work across many domains. I mean, yeah, ChatGPT knows lots of things, but what we're seeing is ones that are very direct and specific, like Docker announced the Docker AI. One of those features that we'll certainly talk about this year is that in VS Code, you can have the Docker plugin. I
Yep.
don't think this is actually, this is like early alpha. I'm not even sure if it's publicly
It's like a
available as a beta.
it's a notebook. The plugin like opens up like a
Yeah.
Jupyter notebook kind of thing.
But it focuses on Docker. So if you ask it questions
Right.
about how to make soup, it's not going to answer it. It's only going to know very specific tips on, oh, this is how you can help with that command, or this is what you need to do in that Docker file. Or it's
Right.
essentially probably going to eventually replace me as the Docker file reviewer or auditor, and it will hopefully audit your Docker file and say, yeah. Like just yesterday, I saw someone who had 10 exposed lines in a row, and they didn't know they could put all the ports in a single line and have one exposed line with all ports instead of each line down the page of every port possibly could be used. And hopefully the Docker AI will just say, hey, look, let's turn that into one line. Like you don't need 10.
Yeah.
What I just got. Oh, go ahead.
Bretbot is going to give you Docker file recommendations.
Right? Well, and then Soapbox rants about your image selection and what browser you might be using in 2024, stuff like that. What I just received yesterday,
slight amount of or like just a tinge of sarcasm in the responses.
Just a little. Well, less no sarcasm, just ranting in general, not about anyone in particular, just about the things that I'm talking about. Yeah. What I wanted to say was the other AI that in the last 24 hours I've started to pick up is I got accepted into the Notion Q&A AI beta, which what this does, and I can demo it if it helps. So a lot of us are using Notion, which is not really anything specific to DevOps, but I can tell you, I actually store shell script examples, I store commands, I store YAML examples in here, I store all of my tasking, my team projects, everything but passwords, right? It all goes in here. And what the Notion Q&A now does is it scans my database, or it has in the tokens I guess, I don't know if that's how it's working, but it takes everything from my Notion account that I have access to, and I can ask it questions. So I can say, what Docker YAML do I have? And then instead of just searching for pages, it will give me a ChatGPT-like experience, but it's returning and it's reading all those documents and then giving me results and then links to the pages that found that data.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I don't have to remember where I kept things, and I don't have to depend on search and scrolling down in search. Also, like questions like, what did I work on this week? And it's going to tell me the pages that I edited.
I wonder what YTL show notes is.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see this on every UI, essentially.
Yeah. That's what I honestly feel like. If you're not shipping an app with an AI that's scanning and understanding, like imagine, like I have CLI tools that help me navigate the file system of the 100 or 500 different GitHub repos that I have. And I'm like, okay, where was that repo? How do I get to it? I know I cloned it from Docker. Was it in Docker or in Moby organization, or was it in Docker samples organization? And then I have to search my file system, and then I have to remember the command to search my file system. And like, I just kind of want that file system utility that can be aware of code and common CLIs. And I just say, I think I said this like a year ago, what I really want is the CLI tool that I can just, or any tool that I can just, it has access to my file system. It can write to my file system. It can talk to GitHub, at least in some limited capacity. And I can say, please make me a new project based on the Docker samples voting app that I have stored here. And then please commit it, please make an init commit, create the repo in GitHub, add a Docker ignore, and do all the basic things, and then give it a nice README and a description.
Yep.
And it just does 30 minutes of work for me. Like,
if there is not multiple companies working on that thing right now, I'd be shocked.
Right. How many Y Combinators are there that are like,
yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing is those like your agent, like let's call that Bret bot, right? That command line tool will then go out to the Notion chat Q&A bot and prompt it. It'll go out to the Code Whisper IDE bot
bots talking to bots.
I mean, we all should. It's probably time well spent for all of us to get used to understanding how to write prompts and how to interact with these tools in some kind
Yeah.
of way, and like, and also understanding what the limits are and how to refine the outcomes of these tools to accelerate our productivity and accelerate what we want, especially in domains that, like, do it in domain knowledge that you have, because then once you know what the limits are and where things are going, you can start to use it in domains that you might not know a lot about, but
Yeah.
still have like, yeah. This is definitely a thing. This is going to be. I'd be shocked if this wasn't the year of those things. I don't know what they're
Right.
called, but
Yeah, I feel like Gen A, like 2023 was obviously the year of Gen AI in very generic ways, and then lots of little niche products with companies that probably won't exist in 3 years. And then we saw, obviously, I feel like the image stuff is a little bit ahead of the chat stuff. Like now that we have, I mean, Adobe's, what is it, Firefox or Fox Fire Phoenix, or I can't remember what
Firefly.
the Firefly. Thank you. Firefly. Serenity. The Serenity, that's a reference to an old
Oh,
show called Firefly. The Firefly is great, and now ChatGPT with Dolly built in is great. I mean, giving me multiple images in less than 60 seconds. I'm starting to.
mm-hmm.
At first, I didn't use them for my newsletters and stuff like that because I felt like a lot of them looked very Gen AI-ish. They still look that way, but I feel like you can get it to look less so, less busy, less stuff going on in the image because it seems like it wants to fill every pixel with something that's not just
Mm-hmm.
a blank color. But I feel like you're right. Like this year is going to be maybe the year if we're going to predict something here. Everybody did their predictions last month, so we're a little late to this. But maybe it's that the harder stuff that is very domain specific, that isn't a SaaS of its own, like the VS Code, like I know we have chat, uh, Copilot chat,
Yep.
which I think is now released from beta. I haven't really updated it since last month, or 2 months ago when they had GitHub Universe and they sort of announced it was all changing and everything was coming out of beta. But I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I don't like why don't I even have now because I use Arc. I got to mention that in every conversation. I have Chat GPT. I have AI in my browser. So if people don't know about Arc.net, ARC, the thing I can do is Control F or on Windows or Command F on Mac. I can search a page and I can just ask it a question in the Finder field about the page, and it will read the
Right.
page and answer the question, which is way more handy in certain cases, especially when it's articles and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
That's way handier than
Absolutely.
just searching for a keyword that I can't find or whatever.
Yeah.
So, go
And
ahead.
I think there's another part to this, and you were kind of mentioning that like the image Gen AI is a little bit ahead. Um, this year is going to be, we're going to hear the term multimodal, MODAL, and the idea there is that input doesn't need to be just text to the chat, to this, chat bot. It can be images, video, um, uh, other sensory information coming in, right? So like, kind of bringing it back to DevOps, it could be like your monitoring observability data, telemetry. It could be, your database data. It can be documents. It can be images and videos, and then all of that, all these different types of modals, right? All these types of different inputs comprise the context, right? So you could have like, it could be taking a screenshot of your desktop and the web pages and like maybe your webcam or something, and audio, and all of that is in the context of the response that you're asking it about, if that makes sense. And then
Yeah,
the output could be an image, it could be text, it could be code, it could be audio, it could be all of those at the same time. So I think this is going to be also an explosion of like combining input types and combining output types as well.
Yeah, I don't think James is still in the show. Sorry, I was realizing we missed some questions. Um,
Oh,
yeah, James Foreman mentioned monitoring Grafana. That's a great idea for this year. We
yes.
definitely need more Grafana stuff. I feel like Grafana is one of those things where it's endless. There's endless amounts of learning.
Yeah.
Imagine when all these monitoring tools, which I'm sure it's already starting to happen, we have LLMs built into the monitoring
Oh,
tools, so I don't have to be
that's,
like a dashboard pro,
yep.
right?
That's definitely happening.
I mean, I
That is
mean,
for sure
think
happening.
about think about. I need an LLM just for Prometheus query
Scrape
language,
companies.
right?
Yeah.
It's probably existing. It's probably on a
No
project on
queries.
GitHub.
Yeah. PromQL. Yeah.
Yeah, PromQL.
Yeah. I, it would not surprise me if that already exists somewhere, like some kind of like interface to the observability data, which is like, why is my application XYZ slow?
Yeah,
And it just like pulls through the data and then like comes back with, oh, like the CPU on this pod and the node on this and the latency on this is this, and this is likely why it's slow or something like that.
yeah,
That's definitely something that's, I'd be
happening.
shocked if we don't see. Yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
super surprised if we don't see something like that out
The
there
funny thing
this year.
is I think all this stuff is actually going to take years to come to fruition in a way that we can all consume it without having to have 1,000 new company SaaS products that we
Yeah,
all have to buy. That will be a barrier to a lot of companies because they already have a lot of these things and they don't want to buy another thing on top of the thing. But so it can't happen fast enough because I feel like we've got a taste. We've got a little bit of a taste for what Gen AI can do. And yeah, okay, so fine. It's in a lot of cases the fact that it's not 100% correct is, we're not in the
yeah,
medical field. We're not controlling aircraft. And as long as it doesn't have write permissions, we can always make sure that it at least validates a little bit. And we're
yeah,
seeing these LLMs where they're actually validating their own statements with like two robots. One says it, the other one makes sure that what they said was true, and that's what's starting
yeah.
to be what's happening. And I see some of the chat. We're gonna have to talk about some of this stuff, but what's also happening, and I just want to share a piece of news because it came in my feed this week, was around the Apple having some white papers. I don't know if you saw this, but um, is it this one? Yeah. Uh, Apple. So one of the challenges is getting these things on mobile devices, and Apple basically figured out, or they have some research papers that are showing methodologies for how to store the instead of it all being in RAM, basically putting it on flash and being able to feed it into RAM in real time in a way that's actually going to work. And so,
Hmm.
you know, this is the year that everyone's talking about, like, when's Apple going to have something? They've announced nothing AI that we've all, nothing that we've seen. So when
Hmm.
are we going to have some sort of Gen AI or Chat GPT like Siri? That everyone's expecting that. And of course, Apple's rarely. I mean, right now they're worried about Vision Pro, which is coming out next month. So that's the Vision Pro is going to be next month. But I imagine like what's going to happen in the fall. Let's all hope that what I'd love to see, and maybe Apple won't do this, and maybe it'll be someone else that does it. But have you ever used Grammarly? Well, I mean, I
Yes.
guess maybe the question should be who hasn't used Grammarly. So I pay for Grammarly because I don't even know my first language well enough to use it safely on the internet. Um, if you pay for Grammarly, you can get a Mac app that basically provides in any text field in any app on my computer, it will pop up and help correct. It'll scan my language on any Slack, Safari, Chrome, Pages,
Mhm.
Word, anything I'm using, right? Discord. And what if I had an LLM like that? That it,
Yep.
if I couldn't access the app, at least it could read what was on the screen of the app. Or if I
Hmm.
was in a Google Doc, it would read the Google Doc. Or if I was in
Hmm.
a Slack, it would scan all the messages that are already in that window, and I could just start asking it questions as a sort of a stopgap before we end up with Slack
Yep.
AI, Discord AI, Chrome AI. Like, how is Chrome AI going to even work? Because then, like, there is no paid version of Chrome, so it would probably have to be a Google paid feature that's maybe part of the Google Workspace stuff, or I don't really know,
So
but
I
Anyway,
took a like an example. I was I've got a 3D printer at home, and I was trying to get some settings right to do some prints. And with my phone, I took a picture of the slicer uh, application and like the settings screen with my phone, and
yeah,
then I asked ChatGPT what settings I should set these settings to, and it was like a
a
camera
screenshot, right?
phone,
Yeah,
like zoomed in, and it figured it out. Like it figured out what software I was using. It understood the different settings. It gave me recommendations on the, and like that was like a 5 second thing that I was like just testing that out, and it totally worked, and it blew my mind that
yeah,
like it understood I didn't give it any information, right? And so even with just a little bit more information, it would even been better response, and it was already pretty good. So
right.
I think we're gonna, and I think someone posted that there's going to be a lot more like specialized local models that people are going to run on like their
Yeah,
laptops or on their
OnSecure was
devices, and
saying that. Yeah,
I think that's probably like very likely.
yeah.
Um,
Imagine like LLMs like being a library that's just plugged into every app, and then the only thing you have to really provide is the training database or whatever you want to call it, the Hugging Face database or whatever those things are. See, that's the thing is I'm such a user of this stuff, not a designer or implementer, that I feel like when it comes to the underpinnings of developing your own custom ones, because I think that like there's a lot of people that last year expected that I was just doing that I was just playing with all of the AI tools and running LLMs locally and like testing out the performance on M1's graphics, trying to build them. And I was like, nope, I haven't had any time for that lately. I'm just going to waiting for everyone else to figure it out and tell me how it works.
yeah.
Um, and
So I
now that
think
we've had those demos at KubeCon and DockerCon, it's sort of it's getting even easier to sort of play with that stuff.
so. I think so. I love the suggestion for more monitoring and observability guests on our show. I think that's unexplored, or less explored in the last few months on our show. Um, I think we're gonna, if I'd like to hear from the audience, but uh, ML ops, are folks interested in figuring out how to train their own models and then like serve their models, right? What the steps are, what even ML ops is, and then also just like how do we use these models that are trained, and the local ones, the SaaS versions. What is it? What does the workflow look like using these models? Is that something that y'all would be interested in hearing more guests and folks like something to explore? Let us know in the comments in the chat.
I am also specifically I'm writing these out, by the way, for everyone, so that your chat is being heard. I'm writing out some of the ideas here, and one of them I just wrote down was PromQL LLM. Like, let's go find that project and have that person on to talk about it. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, we've seen. I mean, early on. I mean, like a year ago, we saw like iTerm has this now. Warp Terminal has this now, where they have ChatGPT or just really GPT API embedded in it, so that you can ask it questions about the terminal, which I've used a few times for things like parameters on a find command, or how do I do, like, it's actually easier right now to ask those things. How do I curl and only show headers, because I can never remember, like, I think I have to like pipe to dev null. I can never remember the exact thing. And I think it's
hmm
easier now for me to ask those tools inside them than it is for me to Google, then click on the page, then scroll through all the ads for the whatever that page is, if it's not Stack Overflow, and
or
then
look through
find
the
the
man
answer.
page. Yeah, or look through the man. Like, there's got to be. I hope someone out there is working on a fine tune model on the man pages of all like the common Linux tools, right?
Every Linux tools man page. I mean, the argument there is probably that that's just ChatGPT. But if it was just Linux
Sure.
tool pages, then it might be something cheaper or free or
Yeah.
and it's not, and
Or
sort of
quicker.
ChatGPT is not built into my CLI or natively, so it's yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
idea though. What's the there's a tool. It's got a purple icon that provides a UI for all the man pages with search built in, and it's a local, and it syncs to
Oh,
local. It syncs all of them to my local machine.
you
I can choose what?
you showed that like a long time. I think you
Yeah,
showed that like in 2022, maybe.
I don't think I have it anymore because I just really stopped using it just because the internet. I mean, search provided enough.
Hmm.
I just didn't find that I needed the docs that much. It's like I don't need to study the docs or understand something in the docs. I just need to understand what that command or that function does or whatever. And the standard library in Go, I need to know what thing. But now we've got all these other tools that can do that. And someone's going to suggest it. I'm waiting for someone in chat to say, "Oh, it's this tool." It's not Nest. I can see the icon in my head. It's like a purple icon. Anyway, there was a paid pro version, there's a free version, and you could download all the man pages in a nice GUI. You could search them and bookmark them. And I always used to have certain Docker stuff bookmarked in it. When I was doing Node.js stuff, I'd have certain things bookmarked, like Express.js's manual or whatever. But yeah, that's stuff that I feel like you're right. It's ripe for a
Yes,
developer. But wouldn't that be Copilot?
maybe.
Probably Copilot. Because it's not, the question is Copilot chat scanning more than just all the source code in the world? Is it scanning the man pages of all the libraries and projects? I don't actually know that. Um, Answer Q, your link doesn't get deleted. I have to approve it. Sorry, he's someone in chat saying that their link got deleted.
Yeah,
It doesn't get deleted. It
we've
just gets, yeah.
we've got some questions in there. Do we want to take a beat
Let's do it.
to? All right, what do we got? James asked, "Does it matter what cloud I learn on between AWS, GCP, or Azure? Aren't the core techs such as Linux networking, servers, and containers more important?" Um, each of these each of these clouds has hundreds of different services, um, and they're different.
Yeah.
If you focus on containers, that's a level, like if you focus on the virtual machines and the containers, that's a level of common abstraction. But even then, like uh, as much as you want to think that something like Kubernetes is like um, fully abstracted from like the underlying cloud infrastructure, each of the cloud providers has a different way of doing like networking and storage and XYZ things, and those and security, and those are different enough between the cloud providers, and container systems have to interact with networking, storage, security tools in those in specific ways. So it does matter, James. I don't know if you're still online, but it does matter which one you pick. And I'm going to try to give a non-biased answer. Pick one and learn it. The core concepts, networking, storage, security, containers, virtual machines, are relatively the same, and they can translate. But there's enough differences that you should just pick one and stick with that, and get that one down first, and have a certain level of comfort with it. Um, so yeah, that's the most agnostic answer I can give about. Obviously, I'm very biased when it comes to the cloud I think you should learn, but also, what's your goal? Right? What's the goal of the knowledge that you're trying to obtain? Is it for career? Is it for working on some kind of project? Is it for building a certain type of application? Uh, Make those like align the outcome goal of what you're trying to achieve to the technologies that you think will help that goal. So career, then you might want to focus on the cloud technologies that are most used by the places that you want to potentially work for or are working for. Yeah. Long answer, longer. All right. What's the next question, Brett?
That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, pick one cloud, get skilled in it. I think like a decade ago, we were largely focused on the VMs of the clouds, and you could argue that, well, there's not a lot. I mean, storage, networking of the VMs, and then the VMs themselves,
Yeah.
and then you could probably compare. Everybody back then had spinning disk and SSDs that were expensive, and then maybe some networking disk that was NFS or CIFS or something like that. But that's like 5% of what the clouds are doing. So we actually are like, I feel like they're all way more unique and specialized than they were a decade ago. And I think that's a trend that continues to happen which is intended. Like they're all trying to distinguish their brand and their feature set and functionality. You've got DBs that like DynamoDB or whatever. You got all these different databases that are and technologies that are very unique to that cloud. So whereas maybe we were saying, yeah, just learn how to run EC2 versus the others, now it's like there are some things in Google Cloud that just don't really exist in that way anywhere else, and you would use them in a different way, and you would implement them in a different way. And so I say just pick a cloud, and we get that question a lot. Like we get the question around what cloud should I choose, and the fact is, if you're asking that question, you probably should just choose Azure. I mean, no, I'm just kidding. AWS. You should probably just choose AWS, as Nirmal, who works for AWS in an office, probably would agree with.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. But I was trying not to. I'm not trying to give a biased answer. I honestly pick one and stick with it. But also just realize where the commonality is and where the differentiators are, so that so like virtual machines, containers, Kubernetes, those are areas of commonality between the clouds. But like you mentioned, DynamoDB versus like some other cloud database, like you're gonna have to realize like that's not anywhere else but AWS, right? So
right. Yeah, I mean, and if you're trying to get a job, right? If you're not in DevOps or in tech in general, or if you are not in an industry that you want to stick in, and maybe if you're trying to get into like a tech startup space kind of thing where you want to work for these small companies that are tip of the spear, trendy kind of things, you probably can skip Azure. I'm just sort of generalizing here, because AWS and Google seem to be the ones that are picked by especially Silicon Valley startups. And then, if you're more into maybe big business, it's like traditional businesses, there's going to be a little bit higher percentage of Azure there, especially if you're a Windows person and you want to, if you like .NET and you like C#. I mean, you can do that on all three clouds, but you might find a few more jobs that are available on Azure. So I tend to tell everybody, if you don't know what job you're looking to get, if you're not looking at the resumes and seeing what cloud they expect you to know, then you're just going to have to default to AWS, which is the largest. And then, if you're looking at a specific region, like a lot of people in Middle Europe love Hertzner, if that's how you say it. And there's Alibaba if you're on that side of the world. Like there are clouds that are very niche and unique, and you maybe need to know those, but those tend to be simpler clouds. Maybe not Alibaba, but is it Alibaba? Is that the one? Am I saying that correctly?
I don't know. Someone should correct us on that.
But I mean, I know, like especially in Europe, we're starting to see smaller clouds. We've got Civo cloud now. We've had DigitalOcean forever. Linode got bought, so Linode's not really Linode anymore. But there's these smaller clouds. But I feel like, yeah, we've got our fans of Hertzner over there, which is cheap, super cheap. So those are not probably the clouds you should start with, even though I recommend DigitalOcean in my courses. not because I expect people to run all their production stuff in the enterprise there. It's because it's so easy to get started, and you can get easier free plans. I also get credits every time someone signs up with my link, so it's a little bit selfish because I can run all the infrastructure for the courses for free because people from the courses are actually signing up through the link. But yeah, I mean, look, as a consultant, 90% of the people that I work with as a consultant are all on AWS. So not because I'm an AWS consultant, it's just they happen to be there. So
the other part to this is like the DevOps skills, like implementing CI/CD, automating infrastructure with infrastructure as code, understanding containers and Kubernetes and network, just like networking at a, like TCP/IP and firewalls and DNS, like those are universal. And so focus on that core set of skills as it applies to the cloud that you pick. But yeah, I mean, those are kind of like things that you need to know, no matter where you're running, like on-prem, in the cloud, on your laptop, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I just thought of a new idea while you were talking about that. What if we had a DevOps recruiter on the show? Like someone who specializes in tech jobs as a recruiter, or just like, I mean, I hate to say hiring manager because the reality is a lot of times a hiring manager is someone who only thinks about that 5% of their week. Maybe someone who's sees many different companies and many different jobs across a wide spectrum. Because we got Kali asking, they're saying I have 3 years experience in AWS, DevOps, Kubernetes, Python, Ansible, Terraform, all the right buzzwords. Those are excellent tools to know. And how do I get a remote job in the UK and US? And I don't know because I've never hired someone remotely myself directly, and I've never been someone remote that's trying to get a job in US, UK. So I'm not that person. I don't know about you.
So if only in the capacity of the companies I've worked for, I'm currently working for, have I been in a position of interviewing folks, but that's just one piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of steps before interviewing and a lot of steps after interviewing and, prepping for an interview. So I think that's a great idea. Let us know in the chat and in the comments if you'd like us to bring like a cloud DevOps recruiter to also kind of give us an update on the trends they're seeing, right? Because the last 2 years has been big changes in terms of the job market globally. So it'd be interesting to kind of get that take from someone who's responsible for finding folks for different kinds of industries. So I think that sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I was Googling. I mean, I certainly know some people locally, and I actually have a family member that works for a company that does that stuff, DevOps staffing and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I might ask around. I'm sure you know some people. That would actually I think really be an interesting show because we get these questions all the time, and I feel like sometimes I'm making up answers because I don't have direct experience, and I certainly don't have the latest experience, right? The last time I was a hiring manager was over a decade ago. So I don't feel like my experience is relevant. All right. Good questions. You want to rapid fire some others, or what were we going to say?
Yeah, let's do it. What else do we got?
DJ said earlier, he said, I'm trying to learn more Docker, especially for my dev containers that I live in all day. I'm learning about how to use SOCAT sidecar for non-root Docker socket access from my dev container. That's not really a question, but I did want to mention that just because he's talking about the SOCAT sidecar, which we actually talk about in the Discord server, which is over there. Discord.gg. Come join us.
There it is.
Over here. Who can get first post in the general
channel?
In the general chat there, in the general channel. So we've got a whole bunch. We got thousands and thousands of people in here. You should join us. This is where the conversation keeps going after the live show, before the live show. We're all hanging out in there. We have meetups. We have multiple meetups now. We've got a Swarm meetup. We've got a High Fiver meetup. That's like a DevOps cooler chat. There we go. Confusio. don't know how you say that. Yeah, so that's all happening over there. So thank you all for joining and showing up there. And we spend our time there. Also, by the way, just promoting our own stuff here. We have a newsletter and a podcast that are related to this show. So you can go to the other side of the screen. No. The other side of the screen to bretfisher.com. And you can get the podcast, you get the newsletter. The newsletter tells you what's happening on the show, what was on the podcast this week, what's happening in my worldview of tech, what Nirmal is thinking about, because we're going to start getting him to do some work here and give me some topics on the newsletter. And that newsletter comes out. Yeah. Just, someday I'll pay you. Like I have my holiday gift guide in there for all the things that I think that you should check out, like things that I really liked in hardware, even in the kitchen last year. I mean, we're DevOps and kitchenware. Like that's basically this show. If you haven't heard about sous vide, that's my jam.
There's a niche.
If you didn't know about salt is this amazing thing, and I now have like 5 different salts in my home, and they all have a specific use case in the kitchen. I read the book, or I read at least a portion of the book, Salt, Facet, Acid, Heat. It's a great book, and I read the salt section first and then skipped the rest. But anyway, so there's all this newsletter stuff that you could be getting for free. You just go to Bret.news. You go to Bret.live to watch this, and then you go to the Discord link up there to join our chat. And then the podcast, which doesn't have a short link, it probably should. The podcast is over here where you can, last year we had some amazing guests on the show. Like we had Brendan Burns on, one of the founders of the Kubernetes project, on about the future of Kubernetes, where that's going. We had Tailscale on last month talking about seamless VPN that both Nirmal and I use. We had Dagger on with Solomon Hykes, the inventor of Docker, and now on his new startup, Dagger, talking about reinventing CI for everyone. There's just so many good things. I'm very, it's not, the secret of the sauce here is that I just invite all the smart people on to make me look smarter. So that's really what these are all about. Very few of these are actually me ranting. Most of these are guests and friends of mine, friends of Nirmal, and other fine people that are willing to spend an hour with us on the show. So go check that out. You can find that in any podcast player out there, just about. I mean, I've lost count of the list of the podcast players that we're on. Like, it's a lot. And I keep adding more as they appear on the internet.
Yeah.
And
so, who are some of the folks? This is out to the folks listening today and maybe in the future. Who out there would you like us to have on the show? Or if there's some folks that maybe you've seen their talks at a conference, or they started a startup in the DevOps cloud native space that you think is interesting and we haven't had them on the show, shoot us a note on Discord, on the YouTube chat, or in the comments. We'll reach out.
You can even reply to our newsletter, and I get that reply. So it's a nice, easy reply. Oh, there you go. The ChatGPT Dolly. I think that one was, I think what I need to do is when I put this image, when I start using these images in the newsletter, I need to put the prompt as the alt text. So that you can see the prompt of what made that. But I think it was like a surprised robot at a computer learning everything all at once, I think is what I said, or something like that. And that's what I got. And then I think I had to say the trick of make it more surprised, even more. But one of the things I did a couple weeks ago was I just gave a random list of like the top 12 things I could think of that I want to know about this year, that I want to talk about, or that have someone else teach me about this year. A lot of it was Docker and Kubernetes related, but it doesn't have to be just that. A lot of it was coming out of DockerCon and KubeCon. Dagger. I definitely want to get more into Dagger, more than just the 101 demos. I want to kind of see what it would take to convert some of my own GitHub actions into Dagger so that I can run things easier locally, or maybe on a different CI, maybe on drone and as well as GitHub actions or something like that. So this was, if you were on the newsletter, I asked for people to reply, and I only got a few responses. So if you're on the newsletter, go find that thing, reply, copy and paste your favorites, throw your ideas in. This is literally how we build our list for the year. Like we both have our favorites and the things that we know we want to do. And of course, one of our secrets is we go to KubeCon and DockerCon and we just go around the vendor area and we look at all the cool new startups and we ask them to be on the show. We did that a lot last year, which is how we're going to get a llama on the show this year. I know Matt Williams said yes, but we haven't booked. We don't know what date that's going to be yet, but hopefully soon. Someone in chat, by the way, mentioned Olama. So
yeah, and the other thing is like we went to the different CNCF projects, so we're going to continue to get some folks from the different incubator, sandbox, CNCF projects, because there's still a lot of them that we've
Inspector Gadget.
Inspector Gadget. And then, so KubeCon EU is coming up in Paris in March, and the co-located events some of the schedules were just released, and if you look at the observability day, you'll see a talk by yours truly. So I will be at KubeCon EU in Paris in 2 months? 2 months from today?
Yeah, just about. Yeah, in a few more days, it'll be 2 months. And all of our friends are going to be there, so you should all be there too. If you're in Europe and you're going to Paris for KubeCon,
we're going to do a live show from there, right, Brett? Me and you again?
Yes. And in fact, over on our Discord server, we have a whole conferences channel where you can see we actually all gather around and take a selfie at the conferences. This is Nirmal and I at KubeCon just a couple months ago, doing a live show from there. We'll try to do the same thing. That's our plan. We've got this was the crew. We had a great crew this year at KubeCon. It was
awesome.
Yeah, it was like 9,000 people there. We got lots of selfies. People kept showing up and leaving, and we I'm not sure if we even met everyone, but we got some great memories from that.
So if you're listening to this and you're at KubeCon, if you're planning to attend KubeCon EU in real life, come find us. Come say hello. We'll be there.
Yeah. We have an interesting question here as I change the subject.
Sure.
Raul's asking, which security certification is suitable for a DevOps engineer?
So my quick answer to that is so before I came to AWS, I was doing a lot of federal government public sector consulting, and basically they had a short list of certifications that everyone was required to have to be able to access like production systems. And so that was like CISSP or Security Plus. I'm sure there's varying degrees of difficulty between these different security certifications, but those are great options. Security Plus is one that I see come up a lot. CISSP is one. I think there's like Certified Ethical Hacker. Used to be, I don't know what the current status of that certification is, but that comes up as well. And then the different clouds have security certification courses and certs for their specific security tools, right? So AWS has one. I don't know what the name of it is right now, but off the top of my head. But so if you picked a cloud, then find that one.
I don't think AWS has a specific DevSecOps one, DSO one, but they do have a DevOps one and a security one. So you could get both of those if your team or company is on a cloud, on that specific cloud. That would make sense. Obviously, getting a different cloud certifications when you're going for a job or working in a company that doesn't use that cloud isn't going to mean as much. Those are all great examples. CISSP, I would say, is definitely like the pinnacle. Usually that's pretty hard to get, and usually that's for people that are dedicated security people. So I've definitely worked in what we call DSO teams or DevSecOps teams, where we really are just including security as a part of our team's practice or guild in case your team is distributed through other teams. But I would say that I don't normally see CISSPs outside of dedicated security offices, because it's also, there's some integrity stuff in there. There's a lot of policy stuff in there. But it's still a great recommendation if you're going to go hardcore security. To add on to your list, I will throw in the DevOps Institute is fairly well known. Right. Yep. They have a DevSecOps certification. I have not taken it, and I haven't taken really any of these DevSecOps ones. The Security Plus one, gosh, that was like 25 years ago, probably for me. But Security Plus, Network Plus, CompTIAs are sort of a staple in the industry, especially if you're an IT pro and you're coming from that IT pro background. They're really popular. The last one I will mention here is SANS, which I mention all the time because I had a wonderful experience getting a SAN Windows security title 2 decades ago, actually. And I remember that I had to actually write a white paper, which was rather in-depth. It almost felt like a mini dissertation. And I had to go into a board I basically had to give my paper for review, and they decided whether I got the certification based on my paper review. And back then, if you can imagine 2004 timeframe, the white paper was on SNMP, SMTP, SMTP email, the email protocol, and black holing spammers and blocking spammers and doing all sorts of techniques for preventing spam attacks and sort of trying to hack into your back then there was all these things where people could get into your global address list if they did certain things. They didn't have security updates. And I was a big Exchange and Linux email administrator. So I remember getting this certification, and it meant so much to me because it was way more than just taking an online test. I actually went to the certification, and it was like a 4-day certification course. I can even remember the guy's name. That's how influential that thing was. Jason Fosgate, I think was his name. And I think he's still an instructor.
That's pretty hardcore.
Yeah. Jason Fossen. So still an instructor 20 years later. This was a guy, I mean, he blew me away with his security knowledge on Windows. And so anyway, they do excellent trainings. They go around the world. They sort of do like tours and stuff. So I can't say enough about them. I haven't done anything with them recently, but they're just a kick-ass nonprofit .org organization for training, and it's all security related across the industry. So so they're agnostic. That's the thing about them is like stuff like this and Security Plus with CompTIA. It doesn't matter what cloud you're using. It doesn't matter if you're using Kubernetes or Docker. These aren't specific tooling certifications. They're gonna follow you your whole career. Like they're gonna be the kind of thing that you do once and you have it forever, even if it expires. Right? Like my SANS expired, but I still put it on my resume because it still shows that I gained that knowledge at some point.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Any last minute? Any more questions? Y'all last chance to get some questions?
Yeah,
in.
last chance. I think I answered all these.
Last call.
Niall had a question. Sorry if I mispronounced that name, but I don't know anything about CI/CD for Flutter, so I can't help with that one.
There's some on the Flutter website. There's some examples like using GitHub Actions, Travis, GitLab, Circle CI. So any of those tools will work.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Akshay is asking about the course cost for freshers. I think I need a more specific question. I'm not sure what you're asking. Obviously, there's lots of courses on the internet. There's lots of YouTube videos. I mean, I sell a lot of courses. My courses are all less typically on my website, all of my courses are less than $20 on Udemy, American dollars, that is. So they're usually like 15 American dollars, sometimes as cheap as 10. There are other higher end courses. There are also great DevOps foundations courses on LinkedIn. If you go look at LinkedIn and you can buy the subscription on LinkedIn, it's 20 or 30 American dollars a month. Gives you access to all their courses, and they have a whole series of DevOps foundation courses that I think are honestly, a lot of them are some of the best stuff on the internet out there. I generally recommend them just because I've taken a couple of them. That's a great question.
So it's just dependent. So for cybersecurity, it's going to be dependent on what you're going for, but it can vary from free to thousands of dollars, thousands of US dollars. So it's really dependent.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, DJ, for saying that you listened to the Tailscale episode with Alex on the podcast. Yeah, that's a great episode. I had a lot of fun with that one. I actually wish we could have gotten more into playing around with it and doing some testing and like the idea. Nirmal wasn't able to make it to that one. I don't think, right? You were gone that week.
Correct. Yep.
And we talked about Apple TV as a VPN
Exit.
endpoint, which
Tail exit. Yeah.
mind blown. I was like, why would? Oh, I get it. Like I don't even need a Raspberry Pi anymore. I could just use my TV. That's just amazing. I mean, why not? Like, I want my Samsung eventually to just be my VPN endpoint because it's always on. It's always got
Yeah.
power, or my refrigerator, one of the two. Like,
I'm just gonna go on the record and say I don't think I want my fridge to be a Tailscale exit node, but it would not surprise me if someone figures that out eventually.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you all
Um,
for being here. Hello, with the Udemy Docker course, what certificate can you do? So my courses do not teach you certifications. I am not yet a certification instructor. So I would say that there isn't really a good Docker one. This will be the last question. There really isn't a good Docker certification anymore. So don't bother with a dedicated Docker one. What I would say is that a lot of the other certifications, especially the Linux certifications around Kubernetes, they assume you know Docker. So if you go get a Kubernetes certification or maybe some of the cloud certifications, they're probably going to have some container stuff in them because it's so prevalent and universal. And so you'll prove your container expertise by getting those, even if you're not going to be like a Kubernetes administrator. You can do that. And those are all, a couple hundred American dollars, I think, at most to get those certifications. So, yeah, great questions. All right. Well, we'll see you next week. Nirmal will be back, I think, right? Are you going to be here next week?
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Back at home.
Nice. Back at home in the office, in the real office. That isn't even the real office anymore. The real office is in your home. This is
The
like
real
your
office is
temporary
in my
office.
heart, right? It's in my heart.
It's wherever my heart is. Where my home is, where my heart is, or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
wherever my heart is where my office
Yeah.
is. Yeah. So we will.
My terminal is.
Yeah, that's right. And we're going to be working on this list for you all. So please come back on Thursdays. We're going to be working on this list all year. If you sign up for the newsletter, we're now providing calendar links so that you can make sure to not miss our special guests that come about every other week. We have someone on the show. Right now, we're sort of in the beginning of the year figuring things out, but we typically settle on a schedule of every other week. We have this show where you can ask all the questions, and then we alternate that with guests on the show teaching us new things. So all the stuff you listed, we're going to be working on that for the next 50 weeks, essentially, of the year. And come back on Thursdays, sign up for the newsletter at Bret.news so you know what's coming, and you can now put it on your calendar. Thanks, Beth. Beth, one of our team members, worked that out. So we have a Google Calendar showing which guest on which week, and you can just plan ahead to be live on the show to ask our special guests all the questions around their tool or project or whatever they're working on. So, and thank you
Awesome.
again for being here, Nirmal. We'll see
Of
you next
course.
week.
See you next week, y'all. Bye.
Ciao, everyone.